Hello, and welcome to Popcorn News. Something to watch while you eat popcorn. Today, Popcorn News has some scary stuff. Scarier even than a Stephen King book. And what is more, it might be true. We know from the New Year's Eve fire at the Address downtown Dubai Hotel that symbolism indicates a collapse of central banks in a plan for one global central bank, symbolized by the Burj Khalifa 2,722-foot high tower in Dubai. This subject was already covered in the Popcorn News video of January 7th, 2016. Dubai Tower Symbolism. We know that last week the Chinese stock market plunged dramatically. Now, just yesterday, a brutal New Year's sell-off in oil markets deepened on Monday, January 11th, 2016, with prices plunging as much as 7% to new 12-year lows as further ructions in the Chinese stock market threatened to knock crude as low as $20 a barrel. Newsmax is reporting that U.S. railroad cargo in 2015 dropped the most in 6 years, and 2016 isn't expected to be any better. Can we make sense of it all? Several experts appeared on various internet webcasts. We begin with Greg Hunter of USA Watchdog, who said on January 3rd, 2016, that it is happening now.
A lot of people just think that we're headed for a crash. We have been mathematically headed for a crash. I mean, in the big picture, people just think that people talking about a crash or a financial calamity since 2008. So, well, it's been going on since 2008. They've kept this thing. They've suspended accounting rules. They've allowed fraud in forex. They've allowed fraud in LIBOR. They have covertly and overtly printed money. They bought bonds. They haven't. I mean, what do you mean? We're in an emergency issue right now. The Fed is in emergency policy still. So people say, well, when is it going to happen? It's happening.
On January 9th, 2016, Max Kaiser and Stacy Herbert weighed in on current economic turmoil via their Kaiser report.
Remember that when the bankers were caught committing financial fraud, the response by policymakers was to write a check to them for $15 trillion to bail out their fraud. And during the last 7 years, they took that money that was handed to them as a reward for committing crimes, and banks like JP Morgan and others have had to pay hundreds of billions of dollars because they've committed crimes. And they used that money to do everything that was leading up to the crash originally in terms of abusing markets with leveraged bets without any collateral. They expanded that by 50 to 60 times. So now the debt in the globe is 200 trillion plus. The amount of money on, let's say, an exchange like the silver or gold-backed markets in New York, they have 300 to 350 times leverage based on what they actually have in the vaults. So in other words, all they did was they gave them the green light to create, over the past 7 years, the same situation as 2008, but on a much bigger scale. Why did they do that? Because that $15 trillion in gift, you take 1% of that or so as a fee, and that went into the pockets of the kleptocracy, the bankers,
yes.
the banksters, and like Bankster Rat. Bankster Rat started out as just a little rat, but over the 7 years, thanks to central bank policies, he's a monster rat. He's going to become even a bigger monster rat because these central bankers reward what I would, without any compunction, refer to as financial terrorism.
Well, the central bank did this, so they began to believe that yes, our central banks are mighty and they can control markets. So here we turn back to Richard Fisher. I'm going to start a little bit with his clip at the very end where he talks about the only thing that in the past year that has returned anything has been cash. And then look at the response from the CNBC correspondent.
The only asset that really returned anything last year, again, if you take away dividends, believe it or not, was cash. It's 0.1%.
Yes.
That's a very unusual circumstance.
This is, Mr. Fisher, this has been an absolutely extraordinary interview. For you to come on here and for you to say I was one of the central bankers who engineered the front loading of the banks. We did it to create a wealth effect. And then to go on and tell us with a big smile on your face that we're overpriced, which was the word that you used in the market, that there would be some digestive problems. Are you guys going to take the rap if there is a serious correction in this market? Will you equally come on and say, I'm really sorry, we overinflated the market, which is a logical conclusion from what you've said?
And finally, Harry Dent, best-selling author of The Demographic Cliff, was interviewed by Alex Jones of Infowars.com on or about January 9th, 2016.
The bubble collapse and get worse. You cannot stop a bubble from bursting once you create it. The only way you can stop a bubble is not to create it in the first place, and nobody gets that. We are in a bubble around the world. Commodities we've been predicting for years have already collapsed. Nobody thought oil would be at $32 a barrel. This crash that's going to happen, it is going to be worse, and we just said this in our January newsletter. 2016 is going to go down, I think, is the worst year for the stock market. Not since 2008, not since 2001, since 1931, because this crash is going to happen rapidly, and it's starting in China, and that's what I've been looking for. I finally told people late last year, gosh, the thing I've been looking for in the last couple of years is for a major bubble to burst, not just oil, which was first, but the second one is China's bubble bursting, and they're not going to be able to
stop. So you're saying we're facing another...
First of all, we've been waiting for a long time to see. I mean, the governments have been keeping this bubble going by printing trillions of dollars, like $10-12 trillion in the last several years. They've been filling in the downturn. They didn't do that in the 1930s. So in the 1930s, the stock market peaked in 1929 when demographics would have said it would, and it just went down. Well, no, they've kept this bubble going, but we've been looking for the final signs. And so I think this bubble's going to burst. It's starting to burst now. To have December and January be the worst in decades is a sign that something's wrong. This happened in 2001. It happened in 2007 and 8. This is a sign that something's wrong, and I think you're going to see not a correction, not a 10-20% correction that the most conservative analysts are calling for. I think you're going to see a major crash in the next year.
Well, you've been right.
Well, again, I think the worst year is going to be 2016, early 2017, the next year or a little more. I think that's when the stock crash is going to hit the hardest, just like it did in 2008. It happened in 17 months, and 80% of that stock crash happened in 5 months between June and early November of 2008. It's going to be like that. Stocks are going to get hit the worst, the fastest. Real estate is going to take years to come down. Businesses are going to go.
It looks mighty scary to me. There are two avenues. One avenue leads to a single global central bank and a globalized government coalescing around it. The other avenue leads to constitutional money, as stipulated in Article 1, Section 8 of the U.S. Constitution. Congress, not a Federal Reserve and not a global central bank, but Congress shall have the power to coin money and regulate the value thereof. Thank you for watching Popcorn News.
Yeah, they ran through the briars and they ran through the brambles and they ran through the bushes where a rabbit couldn't go. They ran so fast that the hounds couldn't catch them. On down the Mississippi to the Gulf of